As promised, we're going to go over the second half of teams in the 2022 World Cup. Complete this thing, Group E through H, and no, a few of you were commenting before watching the previous video saying things like, hey, let's see how bad these predictions are. These are not my predictions, my friend. My bad predictions are coming out early next week. Again, guys, remember at the time of recording this, not all of the squads have been announced, so this is a general guide or guess when it comes to the actual personnel, and more of an overview of how teams got here, how they've done previously, and a window into the kind of form they're carrying going into this World Cup. Sound good? Know what else sounds good? OneFootball kindly sponsoring these previews. And OneFootball will be bringing its library of video content to the big screens for the first time. The OneFootball TV app is now available on Apple TV OS and Amazon Fire TV devices across the world, with Android TV, Samsung, and LG Smart TVs to follow before the end of the year. The entire ecosystem of OneFootball video content from the world's top clubs, leagues, and federations are available to watch now, alongside free and paid live matches, highlights, behind-the-scenes footage, and breaking news now on the big screen. Plus, if you're in the UK and Ireland, you can watch this weekend's Serie A match between Bologna and Sassuolo for free, among many other matches. Whether you're in the UK and Ireland or outside of it, there are matches for you to watch for free from OneFootball. So go check it out. Muchos gracias, OneFootball. That's how you say thank you in Germany. And speaking of, we start with a big one. Germany, Spain, Japan, and Costa Rica will all face off in Group E. Let's start with Germany, who have won the World Cup 4 times, one fewer than the holders, Brazil. Their last outing was one to forget, as you'll remember, as they crashed out in the group stage, incapable of making it out of a group that had South Korea, Sweden, and Mexico in it. The Yogi Löw era was still in full swing and in desperate need of ending, but of course that didn't happen until after Euro 2020, as Löw would have had some credit in the bank, so to speak, following that 2014 World Cup win. Germany's qualification group was incredibly easy for a team of their stature, and they rightly coasted through it, winning 9 and losing just once to North Macedonia, scoring 36 goals and conceding just 4, as Armenia, Romania, Iceland, and Liechtenstein, of course, didn't provide much challenge for them, even if they aren't at their best. Speaking of which, they certainly weren't at their best during the UEFA Nations League or just in general in 2022, where as of the time of recording, they have played 8 games, won 2, drawn 5, and lost to Hungary. Hungary were on it during the Nations League campaign, weren't they? Germany finished in 3rd in their group behind Italy and Hungary, but ahead of England. But the thing is, and my friend Manuel Vith pointed this out, when a core of players are doing well with their club, then that often translates to the national team, as we saw with Germany at the 2014 World Cup and Spain at the 2010 World Cup, as players were excelling at Bayern and Barca respectively. Bayern's form isn't as dominant as perhaps it once was, or it was back then, but the German players like Goretzka, Gnabry, Kimmich, Neuer, Musiala, and Müller have been playing well lately. And in the other talent from across the Bundesliga and the continent, plus Hansi Flick's importance to Germany's success in the past, they'll certainly be a tough side. One of the favorites. One thing's for sure, they aren't hurting in the attack, as We Global Football points out that in their past 20 matches, they've scored 58 goals, which is an average of 2.9 goals per match. Japan, however, will be hoping they can be the surprise of this World Cup. Of course, I'm sure you will all remember how valiantly they fought at the 2018 edition, pushing Belgium all the way before a stunning counterattack from Belgium left them exposed at the back, and that was it, a 3-2 loss. But under Moriyasu and his go-to 4-2-3-1 formation, Japan have found plenty of success to go along with the constant stream of talent that the country produces. Moriyasu has a 69% winning record and has coached the Samurai Blue to a 2019 Asian Cup runners-up spot, and they excelled in qualifying, finishing 1 point behind Saudi Arabia thanks to a shock loss to Oman in the opening match of the 3rd qualifying round. As far as talent goes, they're pretty stacked. Takumi Minamino is integral to the side. He had 10 goals and 4 assists in qualifying and has recently moved to AS Monaco, where he hasn't played a starring role just yet, but he's been able to contribute still. Daichi Kamada is absolutely one of the players to watch, as he is in red-hot form with Eintracht Frankfurt. Takefusa Kubo has been finding his feet with new club Real Sociedad. Up and down performances, but his talent is of no question. Junya Ito is another danger man on that right flank. Japan look good going forward, and there are plenty of attackers to look at, but they're also fantastic in defense, as pointed out by We Global Football, as Japan comes into this competition with 5 consecutive clean sheets, where the likes of Tomiyasu and Yoshida marshal that back line. I'm excited to watch Japan. Costa Rica, they had a very interesting campaign in CONCACAF qualifying. They started quite poorly with just one win in their opening 7 matches, 3 losses in there as well, but the latter half of the campaign was incredible. An incredible comeback. Panama was the side that looked like they would trouble the top 3 in qualifying, those being Canada, Mexico, and the United States. But in Costa Rica's final 6 matches of qualifying, they won 5, including victories over Canada and the USA at home, and drew once away to Mexico. Truly an incredible achievement as they finished level on points with the United States and just 3 behind Canada and Mexico. People, including myself, haven't spoken about this comeback from Los Ticos enough. But in CONCACAF, 4th gets you into the Interconfederation playoff against Oceania, the rep from Oceania, not a Oceania super team, but that would be pretty cool, wouldn't it? Anyway, Costa Rica beat New Zealand 1-0 with a goal in just the 3rd minute of the match coming from Joel Campbell, Arsenal legend. And so this is Costa Rica's 6th World Cup, and it feels like the ending of a cycle for some of the players in this aging squad. There are a few too many players over the age of 30 than a lot of Ticos would be comfortable with a few young paramours sprinkled in there here and there. Some of the faces from that epic quarterfinals exit in a shootout against the Netherlands are still around. Most notable of such being Keylor Navas. Expect them to play defensive, counter-attacking football and try to snatch some goals from set pieces. As pointed out by We Global Football, it has been 24 matches since either Costa Rica or their opponent has scored 3 goals in a match. Finally, we have Spain, a team who are always there or thereabouts when it comes to the top teams in the world. The 2010 World Cup was fantastic. 2014 and 2018, completely forgettable for them. Now, under Luis Enrique, they at least won't have another last-minute dismissal as they did in the previous tournament. At least that doesn't seem to be the case. I guess we'll see. There's still time. But Spain is an interesting side. They play some nice stuff under Luis Enrique, but they lack in any sort of bite in the attack, I find. They play the kind of football that someone like David Villa would have feasted on chances, but instead they have to rely on the likes of Alvaro Morata or Ferran Torres, who unfortunately of late both have missed golden opportunities more than they have converted them. Who knows, perhaps someone like Borja Iglesias of Real Betis will be given a look in. But as for the rest of the pitch, Spain are fantastic, most notably in the midfield, as Spain often are. I mean, they have a tradition of producing excellent midfielders. Pedri and Gavi could play alongside Busquets or Rodri, a wealth of options there, while the wings will look good with Torres or Nico Williams. Question marks over Ansu Fati as he was recently dropped during the previous international window. We'll see what happens there. Should find out today. The defense is where I feel as though Spain is a little bit on the weaker side compared to the rest of the squad. But given their style of play in which they dominate the ball, they typically have to defend very little. And in goal, Unai Simon and Robert Sanchez have both been impressive. They recently snatched first place from Portugal in the UEFA Nations League with a final minute goal from Alvaro Morata. Nice link up with Nico Williams there. Maybe they can do that at the tournament. And their qualification campaign was fairly solid, finishing 4 points ahead of Sweden and losing only to Sweden. Despite not scoring for fun, Spain has still scored in 20 consecutive matches, as We Global Football points out. I've been waiting for this one. As for the first time in my lifetime, I get to say this. Group F consists of Belgium, Croatia, Morocco, and Canada. Let's start with Belgium, a team who has one last shot with their golden generation. The reason being that this golden generation has aged quite a bit, particularly in defense, where both Vertonghen and Alderweireld were called up for this tournament at ages 35 and 33, respectively. And that's an issue across the park, really, as this is a talented but aging core of players. Eden Hazard will be in there despite barely featuring for Real Madrid this season. He's in good health though, which is good, I guess. He's just lacking in match sharpness. Lukaku was called, though he's carrying an injury still. Batshuayi and 35-year-old Mertens have been playing in Turkey. Mertens has 1 goal in 11 appearances. Mishi with 8 and 13, which is quite good for high-flying Fenerbahce. Well, Martinez has included some of the younger generation, such as De Ketelaere, Doku, Tielemans, Onana. It's fair to say that the younger generation isn't at the level that preceded them. Class players all the same, but there is certainly a question to be asked of this Belgian side. With the older generation aging, injured or not in the best form, does the younger generation push them up to becoming a contender at this World Cup? I think it's a fair question to ask, but at least they have one of the best keepers in the world in Thibaut Courtois. When you have the brilliance of Kevin De Bruyne going forward, you won't be short of opportunities. As We Global Football points out, before their most recent UEFA Nations League match against the Netherlands, Belgium had gone 49 consecutive matches without being shut out, without failing to score. Speaking of which, they of course finished second to the Netherlands with 3 wins, a draw, and 2 losses, both losses coming at the hands of the Netherlands, including a 4-1 loss at home. As far as qualifying goes, they eased through without a loss ahead of Wales and the Czech Republic. Croatia looked quite good in their World Cup qualification campaign as well, finishing on 23 points, 1 ahead of the banned Russian side on 22. And they looked even better in their UEFA Nations League group as they finished ahead of both Denmark and France to book a place at next summer's Nations League finals, and they did so despite a shocking 3-0 loss at home against Austria on the opening match day. What a turnaround from this group. While Luka Modric no doubt is the biggest name on this side, there are still a few others left over from that somewhat surprising run to the 2018 World Cup final. Ivan Perisic is still playing at the top level. After a great season with Inter, he moved to Tottenham, where some Spurs supporters are mixed on his impact. But this Croatian side has seen plenty of improvements since that 2018 World Cup. Marcelo Brozovic's emergence as a top central midfielder being one of them, as he is finally back from injury, while Kovacic has looked good when he's healthy for Chelsea. The midfield 3 of Kovacic, Brozovic, and Modric is absolutely incredible. The back line is strong with Gvardiol and Lovren. Erlich of Sassuolo, Stanisic is in a race to be fit. In the attack, Orsic, Kramaric, Petrovic. I like this Croatian side. They'll be very strong. In fact, Croatia has lost just 1 of their previous 15 matches, as We Global Football says, and that loss was to Austria, of course. Morocco had a bit of an internal feud going on, but they have seemingly gotten over that, with players such as Hakim Ziyech, among others, returning to the national team after the sacking of former manager Vahid Halilhodžić. Balkan managers getting sacked after their team is already qualified due to the feuds within the team. Same thing as Iran, but anyway, the new manager, Walid Regragui, has grown into a solid coach as he went from winning the Qatar Stars League with Al Duhail to winning the Moroccan League and the CAF Champions League with Wydad AC during the 2021-22 season. So there is no question that Regragui is a good coach, but there is a question of how much of an impact he will be able to make on this Moroccan team, as he has overseen just 2 matches thus far. A friendly win over Chile and a draw against Paraguay. They'll have another pre-tournament friendly against Georgia as well. As for their qualification campaign under the previous manager, Morocco had a relatively easy group in the second round of qualifying, finishing with 6 wins from 6 games, scoring 20 and conceding once, up against Guinea, Guinea-Bissau, and Sudan. Then in the third round, they were drawn against DR Congo, and they beat them 5-2 on aggregate. So it's fair to say that they hadn't really been tested in qualifying, but that isn't to discount how talented they are, of course. Mazraoui, Hakimi, Saiss, Dari, Aguerd. Nice back line in front of Yassine Bono of Sevilla, great shot stopper. Amrabat ahead of that back line. Ziyech, Boufal, and either En-Nesyri or Amin Harit as the striker. Morocco are a very talented team, and if Regragui can get them on the same page, they could be a potential dark horse in this tournament. And checking in with We Global Football's fun fact for Morocco, only Brazil and Argentina have had a higher possible points yield over the past 3 years. Surely that qualifying group helped, but still, it's impressive all the same. And finally, we have my home country, Canada, who are playing in their first World Cup in 36 years, their first since 1986. There was a time where I didn't know if I would ever see my country play in a World Cup. Of course, 2026 is coming, I would have seen them then, but now they got in there on their own merit. I did a whole video on Canada, by the way, if you're interested, so you can check that out, and you'll get a better idea of what it's like growing up as a football supporter in rural Canadian cities, how Canada has evolved from the dark days like losing 8-1 to Honduras just a decade ago, stuff like that. John Herdman, Canada's coach, completely revolutionized Canada's football program, starting on the women's side and taking that to the men's side now. He emerged as probably the best manager in CONCACAF, leading Canada to first in qualifying, scoring goals for fun, and defending pretty damn well to boot. I say that he's probably the best because, of course, Tata Martino is there from Mexico as well, but what Herdman has done with Canada and the players at his disposal is impressive. Canada typically will play with a back three in a 3-5-2, 3-4-3, 3-4-1-2 formation, where the attack boasts most of Canada's potency. Davies, of course, plays as a winger for Canada. Questions over his condition going into this after a hamstring injury, of course. Jonathan David comes into the tournament in great form, just 2 goals behind Mbappe and Neymar in the Liga scoring charts. Buchanan has been a regular for Club Brugge as well. Look to those 3 to start. Well, Kyle Larin could as well. Despite his poor form, he is Canada's record scorer still and tends to still do well for his country, no matter his club situation. Eustachio stars in the midfield. We'll see how much legendary Atiba Hutchinson plays, and the backline is perhaps the biggest question mark, though it's well organized by Steven Vitoria in front of Milan Borjan and his sweatpants. No sweatpants in Qatar, I assume. A We Global's football note on Canada. Prior to their September friendly win over Qatar, Canada had not defeated a top 50 non-CONCACAF opponent since 2002. Well, you're Americans showing, boys. I'm joking. Even though Canada went undefeated against USA and Mexico, but that's okay. It makes sense because Canada sucked before, and it's absolutely worth pointing that out. Whatever Canada gets from this tournament, I'll just be happy to see them play in what will be a very difficult group for them. Group G will be a tightly contested one. Well, the top team is most likely to be Brazil, but Serbia, Switzerland, and Cameroon will be quite the battle for second. Speaking of battles, Cameroon have had to do so all the way throughout their qualifying cycle. In the second round of qualifying, they finished 2 points ahead of second place Ivory Coast, which is impressive, only to be drawn against Algeria in the third qualifying round. Now, Algeria was one of the most dominant teams in qualifying, of course. They had won the African Cup of Nations recently to boot, and their top players are sprinkled all over the top leagues in Europe. Algeria thrashed their qualifying group, going unbeaten, scoring 25 goals, 5 more than the next highest scores in qualifying, Morocco. So, Cameroon were not fancied going up against Algeria, and they lost the first leg at home. Going away to Algeria, Eric Maxime Choupo-Moting scored in the 22nd minute. Okay, extra time it is. Despite Algeria peppering Andre Onana and forcing a huge performance out of the Cameroon back line. In the 118th minute, Algeria scored to put them ahead, only for Toko Akambi to score in the 124th minute of extra time to make it 2-2 on aggregate, with Cameroon's 2 away goals taking them through. Luckily for Cameroon, their top players are coming into this tournament in great form. At the time of recording, Choupo-Moting has scored 9 goals and assisted thrice in his last 8 appearances for Bayern Munich. Andre Onana is putting in great performances for Inter as he has wrestled that starting spot away from Handanovic. Some thought it could never be done. Now, as We Global have pointed out, Cameroon has not done well playing against teams that aren't on the continent of Africa. They haven't beat a top 100 non-CAF opponent since a win over Moldova in 2014. In that time against non-CAF top 100 opponents, they have drawn twice, lost 10, and have a goal difference of -21. Brazil, of course, are another one of the teams that you would expect to come into this tournament and be a top 2 or 3 favorite to win it. Brazil absolutely destroyed the qualification campaign, scoring for fun with 40 goals scored across 17 matches, 13 more than Ecuador and Argentina. And while Argentina gets a lot of love for their defensive masterclasses lately, Brazil had a better defensive record of limiting their opponents to just 5 goals in 17 matches. However, Argentina is the only team that has been able to hold them scoreless lately, and they've managed to do so in 3 consecutive games. But anyway, Brazil have easily one of, if not the most talented squad at this World Cup, with the fullback positions being the only one that you could point to as perhaps a weakness. There are absolutely gargantuan air quotes over that, as looking at their starting fullbacks, likely to be Militão and either Alex Telles or Alexandro, I mean, they aren't exactly scrubs, are they? Compared to how strong Brazil is in every other position, sure, that could be viewed as the weakest part of the 11, but it isn't weak by any means, especially when you compare it to the fullbacks of other nations, right? Shout out Tactical Manager who spoke of length about that in our podcast. But anyways, they can choose between Ederson or Alisson in goal. Their center backs are so strong that they can leave Gabriel at home. The midfield could be Casemiro plus any of Bruno Guimaraes, Fred, Paqueta. And then the attack, absolutely stacked. Neymar as a 10, and then take your pick for the rest. Rafinha, Richarlison, Gabriel Jesus, Rodrigo, Vinicius, Antony. Terrifying possibilities for Tite, who typically employs a 4-2-3-1 shape. and terrifying form as well, as We Global Football points out that the last time that Brazil lost to a team other than Argentina, Belgium, or Peru was back in 2015. 2 top teams and a bogey team, kind of. They've lost to Peru twice since 2016, but beat them 7 times in that stretch as well. Serbia is a side that many are picking as a potential dark horse for this tournament, and when you look at their squad, it's understandable as to why. Serbia are absolutely gifted in both the midfield and the attack, starting with their strikers, where you have Fulham's Mitrovic and Juve's Vlahovic. The wings see the likes of Kostic, in great form at the moment for Juve, and Andrija Zivkovic. The midfield has Dusan Tadic pulling the strings, Sergej Milinkovic-Savic of Lazio, and Nemanja Gudelja of Sevilla, with a backline of Milenkovic, Pavlovic, and Velkovic, all in front of a Vanja Milinkovic-Savic, who's been great for Torino. That, my friends, is a very good squad, perhaps more gifted going forward than in defending, but Serbia manager Dragan Stojkovic organizes them incredibly well in a solid 3-5-2 formation. They pipped Portugal to first in their qualifying group, helped in some part thanks to the goal that never was from their first meeting. But credit to them for taking advantage of Fernando Santos' Achilles heel. Portugal needing a draw to secure first. That's it. Playing at home on the final match day and ultimately conceding a last-minute goal to lose first to Serbia. Serbia were also great in their Nations League group, which, while it was in League B, they finished ahead of Norway, Slovenia, and Sweden. Sweden, my man. In a bad way these days. They're going down to League C after failing to qualify against Poland as well recently. Oof. Anyway, Serbia are a team to watch out for. We Global Football notes that they have lost just 4 of their past 24 matches away from home, so they are road warriors. As are Switzerland, as they are consistently an incredibly difficult side to play against, which, let's jump right back into a quick note from We Global Football, who claim that by their metrics, no team has had a tougher strength of schedule than Switzerland. They've played 19 matches against top 25 opposition in the past 3 years and won 3. However, they have won their last 2, defeating Spain and Portugal in the Nations League, so they're trending in the right direction. And you'll remember, that comes off of the back of them actually eliminating France from Euro 2020, so sleep on Switzerland at your own peril. They are incredibly solid defensively with the likes of Manuel Akanji, Steven Schär, Nico Elvedi. They'll sit in front of Jan Sommer if he's fully fit, or Gregor Kobel. That's solid. And the midfield is solid as well. Granit Xhaka, Remo Freuler, Dennis Zakaria, Renato Steffen. The attack, where you can potentially get burned in transition. Breel Mbolo, Noah Okafor of RB Salzburg, Seferovic, who sometimes shows up in between howlers. I mean, Switzerland are a very difficult team. They lost their first 3 Nations League matches, only to beat everyone they lost to in the second half of the group. And as far as qualifying goes, they of course finished top of their group ahead of Italy, going unbeaten and conceding just 2 goals along the way. And the final group is yet another very competitive one. I mean, there aren't too many groups where there are just 2 out-and-out winners and the rest nobody cares about. Though some would argue that Group H is, as Uruguay, Portugal, South Korea, and Ghana share the group, but I think it's going to be more competitive than people think. Portugal made it into the World Cup via the playoffs, again, just as they did 8 years ago for the 2014 edition. And like that 2014 edition, they'll share the group with Ghana, which is a very neat parallel there, but a parallel they won't want to share for that tournament is a group stage exit, as they finished behind Germany and the USA. As mentioned shortly before, Portugal's qualification for this tournament was in their own hands on the final match day, just needing a draw to finish top in Lisbon. But that last-minute goal from Mitrovic sent them to the playoffs. They beat Turkey, despite it being a bit touch and go at times during that match, and then faced North Macedonia, of which they dealt with handily, and they can thank North Macedonia for dealing with Italy for them. In the Nations League, they had a similar situation, just needing a draw to win the group, playing at home against Spain, only to lose the game and the top spot thanks to a last-minute goal. I mean, the parallels once again. That said, Portugal isn't necessarily a team that you would want to get drawn against, I don't think, as they are so talented across the entirety of the pitch. When they're on, they can be devastating. Sure, there are questions about Ronaldo and his place in the starting 11, given his very poor season at United, 3 goals and 2 assists from 1,000 minutes across 16 appearances, but there is a ton of talent throughout the attack still. Bernardo, Rafael Leão, João Felix, in good form for struggling at Leti. Bruno Fernandes behind them, Vitinha, solid midfield options, and Ruben Neves, not to mention the creativity going forward of fullbacks Nuno Mendes and João Cancelo. Shout out Dalot as well, who's been in very good form. The center backs are strong in Ruben Dias. Maybe Antonio Silva will play. Maybe it'll be Pep. I don't know. It'll probably be Ruben Dias and Danilo. And then in goal, Diogo Costa, one of the best shot stoppers based on recent form, I should say. But one big dark mark on Portugal under Fernando Santos is how poor they have been at major tournaments. And yes, I acknowledge they have won a tournament under the man, which is unbelievable. But from 15 matches at major tournaments, they have only won 3. 3 matches in the first 90 minutes in 3 tournaments. They thrive in extra time, but they labor otherwise. As We Global Football points out, Portugal has winless in their previous 10 matches against top 15 opposition. They are undefeated in 43 consecutive matches against teams outside of the top 20. Uruguay is one of those teams that caused Portugal to labor, as they beat them 2-1 at the 2018 World Cup, sitting back and frustrating Portugal and then beating them in transition. As We Global Football notes, Uruguay hasn't defeated Argentina or Brazil in 12 attempts now, going back to 2013, and there's a chance that they could face Brazil in the next round as G and H do face off. And despite Uruguay finally parting ways with Oscar Tabarez, a legend of the game in Uruguay, they still play in a similar style, for the most part at least. Relatively similar. Their new manager, Diego Alonso, has a 78% winning percentage and is responsible for turning their qualification campaign completely around. They had lost 4 qualifiers consecutively before him. They won their final 4 matches consecutively while conceding just 1 goal. They are horrible to play against. Great in defense and stunning in transition with players like Darwin Nunez and the very much informed Fede Valverde now finding a finish as well. Oh, and they have a couple of guys by the name of Luis Suarez and Edinson Cavani at their disposal if they're healthy, of course, with a lesser-known name in Arrascaeta of Flamengo potentially announcing himself on the world stage for European viewers during this tournament. I have it on good authority that he is an incredible player, with my man Filippo, aka Tactical Manager, saying he's been one of the best, if not the best player in the Brazilian league for the last couple of seasons. All this to say is you don't want to play against Uruguay. But that's exactly who South Korea will open their tournament against on November 24th. They come into this in good form, as We Global Football points out that they have played 8 matches against non-AFC opponents in 2022 alone, 5 wins, 2 draws, and a loss. Against Brazil, though, we'll excuse that. They beat Iceland, Moldova, Chile, Egypt, and Cameroon quite handily in some cases, while they drew Paraguay and Costa Rica. And again, we'll forgive them for that loss against Brazil. In qualifying, they finished 2 points behind Iran, despite going unbeaten against the leaders. That loss to the UAE on the final match day was what cost them first place, but I mean, no matter. They directly qualified all the same, so who cares, right? A huge boost for South Korea will be that Heung-min Son has confirmed he will be at the World Cup, and he will probably be looking like Zorro, I am sure, with a nice face mask. But hey, we've seen players like Rudiger and Osimhen go Super Saiyan with a face mask on, so let's see what happens with Son. Even if he doesn't, South Korea boasts a great squad still. Players like Hwang Hee-chan, Woo Young-jung of Freiburg, who was formerly at Bayern Munich, Kang In-lee of Mallorca, Jae-sung Lee of Mainz, and of course, Kim Min-jae of Napoli to bring a lot of legitimacy to that back line. He's great. South Korea are a team where, if everything goes right under Portuguese manager Paulo Bento, they can cause some major headaches for Uruguay and Portugal. Not to mention Ghana as well. Ghana don't come into this tournament in the greatest of form, as We Global Football points out that they have won just 9 of their previous 26 matches. 4 of those wins came in the second round of qualifying, where they finished in first ahead of South Africa, but they were level on everything from wins, draws, losses, goal difference. They beat each other 1-0, but Ghana scored 7 goals to South Africa's 6, so Ghana advanced to take on Nigeria in the next round. And Nigeria was absolutely the favorite in the playoff against Ghana, and the first leg ended 0-0 in Kumasi, Ghana. The second, played in Abuja, saw Ghana take the lead in the 10th minute, while Nigeria equalized. As things stood, Ghana would go through to the World Cup on away goals. Despite having all of the ball and outshooting Ghana 14-6, Nigeria couldn't get it done, and Ghana made it through warriors of away goals. Ghana's squad does indeed have some solid talent in it, like Thomas Partey, Jordan Ayew, Kudus from Ajax, Amartey from Leicester, and now they also have Iñaki Williams. They're really against it in this group, but their match against South Korea will be seen as their best opportunity to pick up a point or two or three. And that's it. Almost a full hour of previews completed, my friends. This was a ton of work, so I hope you enjoyed it. My name's Adrian, and be sure to look out for my predictions, which will be out early next week. Cool? Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.